I want to get behind it.
Yeah, anything you like, mate.
Yeah,
I mean, I do this for a living.
Yeah. I mean, it's powerful, Joe. And I want to get behind it as with a few others. Oh, we're live. We're live, but I'm not recorded yet. Yeah, so we'll talk more about it. We can talk about it publicly on when we do the next show together.
Yeah, no problem, mate. I'm up for
Okay.
anything. I don't care.
I got you. 3, 2, 1.
Hello. I'm just waiting for it to come up onto the Soul Stream site, everybody. And then I'll get going then.
It's on social media. It's not going to be on the network. I'll
right,
upload
okay.
I'll upload it to the network. Okay. Gotcha.
Okay, well, in that case, hello, everyone. Just bear with me while I adjust myself accordingly. So I'm just going to go to here. Todd Medina is now live. That's good. I'll now share that to my own group. Share now. And there we are. There we are. And I'll just turn that off. Just bear with me. I'm an old person, you know, it takes me some time to just turn that off. There we are. Shannon, nice to see you. Kristen, and nice to see you too. I don't see you, but you know what I mean. So, hello, everybody. This is Dr. Joe, and this is the I Am Approach to Health and Wellbeing, session 4. I do one of these every fortnight, and we're tootling along quite nicely. And today's session really is all about alignment. It's about aligning our spiritual, mental, emotional, and physical bodies so that we can be more in line with the flow. And I'll explain this as I go along. But just let me put up the presentation and we'll go from there. So I am session 4. And if I just put that onto full screen, there we are. The I Am Approach to Health and Wellbeing. And for anybody who hasn't seen this before, I'll just run through it quickly. I Am stands for, well, the I Am is source, really. It's the creative, the primal energy that created everything and holds the potential to become everything. And so that's the I Am presence, but it also stands for internal or innate asset management. And that's basically about helping us to find our strengths and our soul's purpose and to be able to work more fully in alignment with our soul's purpose, which will then bring joy, enthusiasm, vitality, etc., etc., etc. And this is the personal caduceus, and we'll talk about the personal side of things. So this is the cosmic, this is the personal, and as we go on, we'll talk about these things: red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, and violet. They're the 7 major spinal chakras. So we'll do that. But before we do anything like that, we'll do a recap from session 3. So this is how today's session is going to go. We'll answer, there's some questions being sent on Padlet, so I'll answer those as best that I can. And then this session, we'll talk about the 4 quadrants. We'll talk about body, mind, soul, and spirit. And we'll talk about how to remove obstructions to the flow of this source creative energy. How can we find out what's obstructing us and how can we move them as quickly as possible in order that we could be more vital, more useful, more happy, and stuff like that. And so that's about overcoming and removing obstructions, but it's also becoming aware of them. How do we know when we're being obstructed? Well, I'll explain that as we go along. And then we'll look at mindful movement and muscles and trigger points. So how does this creative energy filter its way down into our body? And how can we use our bodies in the most efficient manner in order to express ourselves fully at the level of the soul, at the level of open-heartedness? And then we'll conclude then with we'll try and draw it all together. So I hope that's making some sense. And actually, I'll be able to see if anybody's got any comments on the Facebook. I'll try and look at those because I don't normally have an opportunity to answer comments, but I'll do my best. So let's have a look at some questions and comments from session 3. I'll just have to stop the share and go on to this next screen, so bear with me. So I'll now go on to this. Where have I gone? Bear with me, I've got lost. You can tell, can't you? Wouldn't you think he'd be professional at his age? Just hang on 1 second now. Share the screen. Where is it now? Where is it? Come on, son. Stop messing about. Let me just go back to my presentation. Try again, Joe. Hi from Sweden. Hello. Just bear with me, Sweden. Contestant from Sweden. So I've got that on now. What I need to do is stop that share. Go over there. And then once again, share that screen. I don't know whether anyone could see that. No, they can't. Hang on. Oh dear. Oh, there it is. Good heavens. Right, that should now be coming through. Sorry about that, chaps. There we are. So what we'll do is we'll look at some of the questions and comments from last week, and I'll try and answer them as I go along. Could you speak about neuroplasticity and the different ways to create it? I've been on strong antidepressants and sedative drugs since I was 13, bound to have messed my brain up. Yes, well, I'll do my best. Neuroplasticity, as the name suggests, it suggests that neuro being in nerves and plasticity meaning adaptability and the ability to change structure and function. That's basically what neuroplasticity is, the ability for the nervous system to change, to redirect itself. And there are several ways, in fact, on how to increase the neuroplastic effect in the brain, and also to create new habits, basically. But the difficulty is always how do we get rid of the old habits? And that's the thing. So some things to this is basically what the I am approach is all about, really. The I am approach really is about tuning into the heart, because that's where the source of creativity is, but it's also the source of power and courage to change as well. And in the societies that we live in, generally speaking, we'll use our heads and our willpower to try and drive ourselves into new ways of behaving. And this, generally speaking, it's a waste of energy and a waste of time if we're trying to use our thinking to overpower very strong instincts for to defend ourselves. So what we've basically got to do is we've got to drop into the heart and basically let go of all the ideas, all the emotions, all the attitudes that we've had up to this point. And we basically drop into the heart. And this is the difficult bit, is surrender then to the heart's guidance. And the idea is through certain breathing techniques and positive emotion. And most people who've seen my stuff before will know what that technique is. It's heart-centered breathing, and it's basically sinking and letting go and surrendering into trust that the spirit will actually start to guide us into create new pathways. So that the most difficult thing is to accept. I've tried absolutely everything to change. Nothing's been successful. I've taken all sorts of medications. I've been on God knows how many courses, but nothing's changed. And that's a really, really good point to be in. It's almost like a rock bottom. where we have to go to a different place and a different dimension. And that's what happened to me, is I had to surrender my head, and people have heard me say it before, is to metaphorically decapitate myself and just throw away every single thing that I'd learned up to that point, and then just start to develop a relationship with my innate intelligence. And my innate intelligence, if you like, is in my heart of hearts. And what I did then was I had to ask, I had to say, I really don't know. This is with sincerity. I really don't know what to do anymore. I've tried everything. I'm going to hand over my will and my life to your care. And I'm going to try and listen one day at a time to the guidance that you're giving me. And this is the difficulty, is that when we listen to external sources like coaches, they might suggest or see or think that they know what's best for us. And this is the process I went through for years. I went to psychiatrists. I went to psychologists. I'm not knocking these people, but they just didn't understand where I was coming from. And in the end, it was in Alcoholics Anonymous that I found the solution. And that was, I needed to let go of all these ideas and emotions and attitudes. And I basically developed from that point on, which was a long time ago now, I developed the ability to become more and more sensitive to the way that spirit, if you like, the spirit of innate intelligence was driving me. And here's something that's really important that I've learned, is that you will have to allow it and its guidance to guide you to what actions to take on a daily basis. Because if we think we know what we need to do, that's probably going to obstruct it. And what I'm trying to say is, let's say, for example, we're doing something to do with the body, and an external coach might say, oh, yes, you need to do 10 press-ups and 10 sit-ups every day. Well, that actually might be the exact opposite thing that we need to do. We might need to do nothing at all and just do some stretching. How will we find out? By trusting our intuition. So just to try and go into a bit further, is there's neuroscientific evidence now to show that if you do mindful breathing and mindfulness, you develop more space, more objectivity. And in that objective space, if you like, a neutral space, new ideas and inspirations emerge on what actions to take. And the neuroscience has also shown that by practicing this mindful breathing, our brain waves change to a more relaxed, more open sort of situation, if you like. But not only that, our biochemistry in our brain changes. I'm going to say a posh word here: brain-derived neurotrophic factor. And that's what happens, is it's almost like the soup out of which new neural pathways develop. And then what we do then is, if we practice movements and positive emotion, then we start to almost like kick out the old habits slowly but surely. And we tend to get behind them, kick them out, and create new ways forward. Other things that help as well is nutrition's very important. Omega-3 fatty acids and stuff like that. Fish, all those sorts of things, you know, nutrition's extremely important, because really that helps to build all these new sort of substrates for new neural development. So there's loads of information actually on this. So other stuff as well. I've mentioned mindfulness. There's no doubt about it that physical exercise, I don't mean really extreme exercise, but I mean sort of relaxed exercising and movement has also been shown to increase this BDNF and also improve neuroplasticity as well. So the other thing is as well, repeated practice. If you keep practicing these new positive things. Now, the other thing about it is, if you keep practicing the negative ones as well, they also become quite strong, you know, and they resist change. So what we've got to do is really, you have to be relaxed and be gentle with yourself and just keep moving forward. Now, because you've been on strong antidepressants and sedative drugs for a long time, you will have probably some sort of, if you choose to do this, and can I just say, just to cover myself, you need to work very closely with your health professional as well, and maybe suggest, this isn't working for me anymore. I'm going to try a new approach, but I want to be honest with you straight from. And so it's to develop a partnership with your health professional, but stand on your own 2 feet as well, and don't be bamboozled into sort of being given any other stuff, you know. And what I'm trying to say is to work closely I'm not at all opposed to medications of any sort if they're used in the right amount at the right time for the right condition. And I went through this process. I gradually, with the help of my health professionals, because that's the environment I work in, I weaned myself off everything. And now I trust my intuition. Now, if my intuition tells me, because I've got some sort of an infection, that I need to take antibiotics, then I'll listen to that as well. So, you know, I'm not opposed to anything. I'm not fighting anything at all, but I get led by my intuition now more than anything else. So my suggestion to you is put your hand on your heart, really say that I don't know what to do anymore, and get a feeling. You know, you could do like a little sacred ceremony if you want to. Put your hands on your heart and say, look, heart of hearts, I'm going to trust you. I'm going to try and listen to what you're telling me and guiding me to do. And I'm going to try and follow your instructions now, one breath at a time, one day at a time, and one step at a time. And if it works the same for you, like it's worked for me, it will be nothing more but miraculous, you know. So just to recap, I feel very positive. I think this is the essence of what is the I am approach. And it's about being heart and soul led rather than being duped by our heads, really. And also, if you're a sort of an academic type person as well, it's really difficult to let go of your intellectuality. But that's the point I had to come to, is because I've tried everything and it just wasn't working. So whoever's written this, you could be in a really good position here. But what I'm saying is be gentle with yourself, tune in and try and follow the generally non-logical approach of your intuition. So it's focus on feelings first rather than listening to your head. And I'm not saying disregard external information, but I'm saying allow it to sit in your heart and just feel and say, is this the correct thing for me? I hope that I've answered that in some sort of a way there for you. Next, demonic attachments. What's the best way to remove negative attachments? Well, and be free of psychic attack. So to me, I look at this in a different way now. I don't do demons and I don't do all these sorts of things. What I do is negative emotions. And to me, negative attachments come from emotional disturbance. And emotional disturbance to me means not a great sort of deal of trust and faith in your own deeper ability or the ability of your innate intelligence. And what I'd say here is psychic attack is when you get a grip in the gut, you become tense, you become frightened, you can become anxious. The best way to shield ourselves is basically how I've just answered the last question, because generally a lot of these negative attachments or so-called they can only feed on fear, you know, and they're basically just thoughts, really. The thought of thoughts with awareness that are always looking out for fear. And they feed on, this is sometimes called loosh. They feed on this loosh, which is basically negative energy. And the more that we can become more positive, trust our heart and allow our heart to flow and express ourselves from the depth, the more that we start to protect ourselves based upon this expressive aura that looks after us, you know. So I don't know whether that makes sense, but the way I've just answered the last question is exactly the same for this one as well, is to trust your heart, sink deep, listen to the intuition and the prompts, if you like, and the inspirations. By the way, inspiration means to breathe in. So this is also become aware of your breathing, become aware of a positive emotion, and almost like breathe away these so-called demonic attachments. That's my suggestion anyway. And what seems to work for me. And by the way, you know, I haven't got this cracked. I'm still learning myself as I go along, but I feel calm most of the time. I feel clear-minded, and I feel really confident in this sort of a deeper ability that's looking after me. Can PTSD be cured without medication? Well, let's see what PTSD is first. Post-traumatic stress disorder. And, you know, my feeling is that most of us, you know, have been through some sort of a trauma, which is basically, you know, we've not dealt with them properly. And what we tend to do is we tend to push it down deep into our psyche and hope that it never sees the light of day. Well, my understanding is, and I had this as well, you know, in complex PTSD. And I think, can it be cured without medication? Well, cure is a difficult word, but I think my own experience was that initially I needed to be medicated when I was applying these new techniques as well. And as I've just explained before, it's working with the health professionals and with my intuition that over time I was able to clear all these different things and then face the fear and almost like dissolve the trauma, you know. So the answer to this question is, it all depends on the circumstances. It depends on the depth of the trauma, you know, and there's so many different things. I think, you know, I was on something called selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors, you know, and there are things like Prozac and, you know, paroxetine, fluoxetine, sertraline, these things. And what they do is they just allow serotonin, which is the happy hormone, to stay longer in your nervous system. And that gives you a sort of an uplift and a boost. But I found actually that I don't know, I can't remember, it was that far, that was, you know, a long time ago, but I had this driving force within me to try and clean up my own act. And I don't take any medication at all now unless it's absolutely necessary. But, you know, we have to make our own sort of decisions based upon how we deeply feel, and also listen to the advice of medical professionals as well. So can it be cured? I think that it can be alleviated considerably. And I suppose if we can bring to mind when the patterns match. By the way, the other thing is PTSD, it re-emerges when we're in an environment that brings up a similar pattern to when the trauma happened. It's not the same, but it's similar to. And the reason it's similar to, and the reason that it pattern matches and brings emotion up, is so that it can be dealt with. And you can deal with this by using the I Am approach to health and well-being, heart-centered breathing, positive emotion, and over time, basically breathe it away. And sometimes it can be removed in one big chunk, and sometimes it takes a lot longer. Other things that can help is, well, trauma-based cognitive therapies are helpful. You know, people who are experts in this can be helpful to, you know, help you to sort of breathe your way through it. Also, other things is EMDR, that's eye movement, desensitization and reprocessing. And basically what that is somebody asks you questions about the situation and they move their fingers like this. And when you're doing that, your eyes are moving and you're actually going into just one side of your brain. So they can move it, let's say, to the left hemisphere. And if the left hemisphere is where the sort of buried trauma is, then sometimes by asking questions and doing this movement, right, it can actually start to unlock the trauma. And while the trauma's unlocking, you can actually talk it out as it's emerging to be dealt with. And if that doesn't work, they do it the other way around, and they can move it then to the right hemisphere to try and find it there. You know, I've done a lot of study with EMDR. It's absolutely fantastic. But also by using heart-centered breathing, you can come to some sort of a neutrality and a middle point. So using EMDR and mindful breathing with positive emotion, I think that enhances and helps the process along. So the answer to your question is cure. If it's completely released and it doesn't cause any problems anymore, right? I think it can be cured, but whether you can do it without medication will depend on the depth and the actual shock and the repetition of the shock that went on. So horses for courses on that one. Is there a fast track to spiritual growth and freedom? Depends how much money you've got, you know, direct message me later. That's a joke, by the way. Is there a fast track? Well, I think we can help people now by sharing our honest experience, strength and hope with people, because what that seems to do is it hits a resonant point in their heart and in their unconscious, and I think that can help them. And then if you're successfully proceeding along, you can almost like be a sort of a light bearer for the way that it works. So I think there is a fast track if people understand how this works. And I think more and more now these methods are coming to the fore. So I suppose if you develop your own sort of system, you know, and you develop your own sort of principles for living, I think it is, yeah. And the more that you practice and keep going forward. So the fast track is, it depends on how closely you stick to the promptings and the guidance from your heart. You know, other than that, it just becomes Groundhog Day, and one day builds on another, and then that sort of devitalizes and exhausts us. And you know, we just have to keep repeating it until we hit a rock bottom, and then people say, oh, I should have done that years ago, you know. So yeah, there is a fast track, depending on how closely and how quickly you become more aware of your body's feelings and your body's sensations. So yeah, and that's what this session's about today, is how can we become more aware. I hope this is making some sort of sense. Let's see. There's a couple of I haven't seen the other sessions. Are there replays to be found? Yes, they are, but you've got to be a sort of a member on the Soulogy network, and I think it's very reasonable. So if you look up soulogynetwork.com, there's a public page there that will give all the information that you need, and it's under the I Am Approach heading. What's this next one? Let's see. Please feel free. Oh, that was my comment. So okay, I'll stop that now. Stop that share. And then I'll go back now to this. Okay. And now I'll go to this here. That's better. So we've done those. I hope I've answered those properly. If not, you know, by all means, I'll put another link up at the end of this. And by all means, I don't care if you say things like you didn't answer that very well, or can you give me more information? Because I much prefer when I can chat to people live. But don't be shy. Ask me any questions. And no, I'm happily married. Thanks very much. So that's what this is about. The I Am approach. It deals with the physical. So there's the biomedical model. It's a 4-quadrant model. We look deeply at the emotions and what are emotional reactions and what are they all about. Then we look at IQ. You know, so these are 4 intelligences. And then we look at this one, which is often forgotten. So for a long time now, health and medicine has been okay with physical emotionalness. This is called the biopsychosocial model, really. And they've tended to disregard this area now, so-called spirituality. Now, when I'm talking about spirituality, I personally am not talking about religion. I'm not a religious person. I used to follow religion closely, and it was deeply sort of embedded in me. But I'm more inclined towards quantum science now. I see all this as physics because I am a scientist, and it makes perfect sense. And the sort of information, I've got most of my information from yogic philosophy or the Vedas, you know, but also something called Keylontic science, which I've found to be, I don't agree with all of it, you know, or maybe I'm wrong and I just don't know yet. But I feel that it's about the closest to how my brain works, really. And it's really about how creation started and how everything sort of descended and exploded from there. So I'm going to talk about that. But unless we've got balance in these 4 components, I honestly don't believe that we can be a whole person. So that's what I'm going to focus on now, these 4 quadrants. And just to start off, here's the great bang, you know, the big bang, or the start of creation. In the beginning was the word. And then, you know, from the word, the I Am started to express itself. So there's the cosmic sort of as above, so below. And then what happens then, because everything's always moving, and this is what Tesla was saying, there's no such thing as static. Everything's moving, but it's just vibrating at different frequencies, you know, and this becomes very important when we get onto some more of the sessions later on, is how can we change our reception and our understanding of all these different frequencies of our 5 senses. So you can see here that this is a spiral dynamic approach. But the important thing here is not only is it going one way, but if you see in the middle of it, the center, it's also feeding back to the cosmos as well. And what this is actually doing is the cosmos is sending new information. And in this great shift of consciousness that's going on at the moment, we're receiving new, clear, completely new information on how to create a better world. And this is just my way of explaining it, really. And what then happens is the cosmos is sending these vibrations, some people call it from the great grand galactic sun, to our sun. And then our sun now is increasing in solar impulses and solar flashes now. And what that's actually doing is it's impacting upon our spiritual body. And this spiritual body here is in the invisible realms. but we're connected to this because apparently, you know, some people believe, and I do myself, that we're in a sort of box and space of time where there's potentially 15 different dimensions, and we can actually access as humans 4 of these dimensions, and I'll explain more as we go along. And it's in something called a cathartic grid structure. So this is a Cathara sort of structure. Also mentioned as well in the Ascension glossary. So there's all sorts of stuff going on in the invisible realms here. And that then is stepped down. The energy then is stepped down and impacts upon us through the meridian system and through our nervous system. Now, if everything's flowing, we remain emotionally calm. But generally speaking, when there's any obstructions, either here or here, we're in fight or flight, on the defensive, and we feel that in our physical body. And as a consequence of being defensive, our thinking becomes defensive as well. We can become hyper vigilant. We can become on alert all the time. We can be just we can become what's called egocentric, you know, and I'll speak more about this as we go along. And from there, then that translates into our physical body, and we take actions based upon that. But our physical body can also suffer the consequences of what's actually going on in these components. So the sun's firing out new waves and new vibrations. It's causing an increase in the Schumann resonance. That's then banging on Earth's surface. The Earth is itself undergoing an evolutionary process and ascending as well. And we're feeling all this. But generally speaking, people feel this emotionally and physically, and they don't know what's going on. They've got no idea what's going on here, because most people are so distracted away from their own bodies and their own body sensations. And that's what I found out, that I was just basically a head on a stick and just trying to look for external solutions until I was introduced to these things that I'm talking about today. So there's those, and there's the cathartic grid. Now, I use this 12 sphere structure, but if you can see here at this end as well, the 7 major chakras fit in here. And these 5 here are split into 2. So this is a chakra that's got 2 sides, if you right, a left and a right, a masculine and a feminine, an eastern and a western, and a yin and a yang. So each of these chakras are split into 2, and they form different spheres of consciousness and different sort of understandings and intelligences. So that's where I'm working from. But the whole process is basically, it's a spiral, it's spiral evolution, because for a long time, we didn't have access to a couple of these spheres, and we were just basically going round and round and round in the same old circle. But until a few years ago, full access came online, and we got back, if you like, to the 12 sphere tree of life. And I feel this is intuitively true, and it makes perfect sense to me, because for a long, long time, I kept sort of getting inspiration about the importance of the number 12. And that's for the last 30 odd years, 35 years, I've been looking at the importance of 12. And the way I see it is, I think there's a 13th one, which is the center, which is representative of the heart. And I think there's also the connection to the 12 cranial nerves. I'll explain this more as I go along. And they represent skills, attributes, and stuff like that, you know. And if you like, if you were a religious person or a Christian, you could almost liken this to Christ and the 12 disciples and things, you know, or the 12 signs of the zodiac, or the, you know, so they're all different frequencies, they're all different streams of consciousness, and they're basically what we're now capable of accessing all this in what they call quantum consciousness. And I've mentioned before is, I think consciousness is also related, as we go ascend, to conscientiousness as well. So I think there's almost like a sort of internal morality and ethics that goes as we ascend through these different things here. I hope that's making some sort of sense. But, you know, how do we know which ones to work on? Well, I'm going to show you that now. So the information then from the cosmos to our galaxy, you know, and we're in the Milky Way galaxy, and we're also receiving information from the Andromeda galaxy as well, apparently now. but the information comes in through the invisible realms, and this invisible energy enters what's called the chakras. And we have 7 major spinal chakras. And it's almost like it works through, if you like, a plasma type thing, and of different vibrations. So different chakras pick up different vibrations of energy. And if these chakras are aligned perfectly, then we're totally in line spiritually, emotionally, mentally, and physically. We're in perfect shape. We're flowing, we're going, we're growing, and we're evolving, and we're happy with it as well. However, unfortunately, there's not many people in that condition on the planet at the moment. And here are the spinal chakras as well. We've got, and they associate with the 7 major endocrine glands. So we can see here that this one here is associated with the root chakra. And you can see it's the closest to the legs. And sometimes people who are afraid can't stand on their own 2 feet, and they're not grounded, so they're not receiving the full flow of energy that comes in from Mother Earth, if you like, or the center of the earth, into the root chakra. And the first sort of hormone that's associated with that is a defensive hormone called adrenaline, and that's associated with the kidneys. And as we move on, then we get in. So this is about physical. So this is about, and I don't want to cause any trouble here, but this is just the way I see it. This is about your physicality and whether you're male or female, right? Not masculine and feminine. That's coming up next. So that's your biological characteristics. And you'll be able to tell which one you are by looking in that bit there, but that's another story. And then as we ascend then and start to grow, then what comes online then are sexual and intimacy characteristics. And this is all part of Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And it's associated with the gonads. And the gonads in men are the testicles, you know, and in a woman are the ovaries. And both the testicles and the ovaries secrete different hormones, for example, estrogen and testosterone. Now, it's very possible that somebody born female can have an excess of testosterone, and so they would be considered from a gender point of view to be more masculine than feminine. Do you see where I'm going with this? Right. And so the idea would be is, you know, there can be gender differences, but but physical sort of I don't know the word I'm trying to use here, but that's what I'm saying. So this is our physical biological suit. And this is now when we've moved into the area of sexuality and also gender identifications and things. When we then move up to the pancreas, this is the area of energy production. So at this area, we've got the liver, we've got the spleen, we've got the pancreas. So all those things are to do with energy. And believe it or not, the spleen is so misunderstood and so sort of left out, but more and more information is coming on now, just how important the spleen is for natural immunity and vitality. So I'll talk more about that. Then we get to so we're talking about things like insulin here, and also the storage of energy in the liver and all that sort of thing. So that's the energy and the power production plant there. Then we get into the lower heart, and then they get into the higher heart, and that's associated with the thymus gland, which is once again associated with our immune system function and how we deal with things, you know. So it's our natural immunity. And I think more than anything else is to understand that stress reduces our natural immunity. And so anything we can do, and this next week's session is all about stress management, anything we can do at all to get back into nature, to get some rest, recuperation and recovery, will restore our immune system function and will put us in a better place with all these things that are flying around at the moment. So that's just a sort of little coded message to say, back to nature, rest and recovery, give yourself some space at the end of every night, do some stretching. I'm going to talk about more about this, do some meditation, and reset the balance every night before you go to bed, and then you'll get a better sleep. Oh, that's what I meant to mention before as well. On the front of neuroplasticity, sleep is important. But if you do some of these things before you go to bed, you'll reset your pineal gland and you'll start to be able to sleep better because you'll increase your melatonin levels. And then we've got then the thyroid, and lots of people are becoming more and more expressive now. So their thyroid is becoming more active, and that's to do with iodine production. It's to do with thyroid hormones and parathyroid hormones, and they're also associated with energy production as well. So the more you express yourself, the more you get stuff off your chest. My phrase is, as you know, probably said it 1,000 times, if there's something playing on your mind, best get it off your chest as soon as possible. And that means sharing your true, honest feelings with some. I don't mean destructively, never destructively, right? But it's to express with a friend who you can trust and just say, this is what I'm thinking, this is what I'm feeling. And sometimes when you've got it all off your chest, your perception changes and you see things in a different way. So there's the thyroid gland. Then we get into the pituitary gland, which is called the master gland. And that's associated with what's going on here in the adrenals as well. And then finally, this wonderful, wonderful gland up here called the pineal gland. And in the pineal gland, we have what's called 2 suprachiasmatic nuclei. And they're basically your bio clock. And each person has got a different biorhythm. And there's ancient philosophies that have known this for a long time, like in the Vedas, and in Indian medicine as well. They've known for a long time that different souls have different time clocks and their bodies work at different times. So for example, some people are morning people. When they feel clear, they've got energy and all that. Some people are afternoon people, some people are evening people. So if you're working against your natural biological rhythms, right, then you'll always be fighting against the resistance and tiring yourself out. So it's important to sit down, try and look at what are your own biological rhythms, get to know yourself more, and then start to work in accordance with your biological rhythms. And I know it's difficult because we work in the West in this 24/7 and 9 till 5 or more like 9 till 7 now. And some people have a chronic inability to relax. And that's almost like a habit now. Work hard, earn as much as you can, and then that will bring you happiness. I don't think that that's true anymore. I think that the more simple we can keep things and the less demanding we are of ourselves and of others, then I think that that will help us to restore a balance. So that's that. And here again are the chakras. And I will talk about these in a couple of weeks' time. I'll individually go through the nuances of these, but just to talk about different vibrations and energies and frequencies and effects. Red, orange, yellow, green, blue, indigo, violet. These are all part of the electromagnetic spectrum of visible light. This has got the lowest vibration and this has got the highest vibration. And this is violet. And from violet, then we get into the invisible realms of ultraviolet. And then we move back into X-rays and gamma rays, and we go back to the sun. So the sun's up here, and this is further down towards the earth. And when these are all balanced, then obviously they're affecting the endocrine system. The endocrine system is then secreting, based upon our individual characteristics, certain biochemical substances. When those substances are all balanced as well, what actually happens at the crown is we produce loads and loads of something called dimethyltryptamine, which is actually it's actually a sort of an add-on to tryptophan, but that's another story. I'll talk about that again. And dimethyltryptamine is called the spirit molecule, and we can produce that naturally. And the more that we meditate, the more that we stay in neutrality, the more that all these balance out and they all work together. It's like a chemical cocktail, which then sends us into high levels of bliss consciousness and cosmic consciousness. And I honestly believe that the cleaner that we are and the way that we use breathing and meditation and posture and movement, all those natural things, right, will take us to what's called self-mastery and self-actualization and cosmic consciousness. How do I know? Because I've tried all the chemical stuff, and I think what the chemicals do is, and I'm not knocking anybody who's trying chemicals and stuff, but what the chemical substances gave me is, it gave me an indication of freedom, but I needed the chemicals to get it, you see. And that's why I became addicted to alcohol and prescription medications and all sorts of other things, because I was trying to use something external and chemical to get an internal change, when I realized today that it's about taking actions in the right direction that actually reset the balance at the level of the chakras. Sorry if I'm sounding like I'm lecturing, but I'm just talking about my own personal experience. And that's what we want, really. And just to say that some systems believe that the spleen, right, is the solar plexus one as well. So it's not only is it associated, but it's the most important of those organs. So we've got liver over here, we've got stomach here, we've got pancreas over here, and we've got the spleen. And the spleen's used in lots of pranic healing systems. It's understood that it cleans the blood, but it also is a center of vitality as well. And it works with the heart. There's a front pointing spleen chakra, but there's also the connection at the back. And at the back, this is called the energy triangle or the splenic triangle. And sometimes, and I think the symbology of it is, apparently when Jesus was on the cross, the centurion actually took a spear and actually punctured the spleen in order to let the vitality out. So that's apparently this, and it makes sense to me. That's the symbolism of that as well. And also the nails in the wrists and the hand, they were also to obstruct energy centers as well. So that's what we want, really. We want alignment, really, is when spiritually we're aligned spiritually through mindfulness practice and through receiving inspiration and intuition. We can then tune in, then we can feel by our emotional state, if we feel calm and neutral and balanced, that will send clearer information then to our intellectuality and our logical mind, and it will give us ideas then of the correct actions to take place. So this is really, just bear with me while I have a look how we're doing for time. Oh God. So there's 15 minutes to go. I'll try not to rush it, but I want to sort of go quite clearly through this. You can see on this diagram here that there's information coming in. It's going through this spiral channel here because there's a flow coming in here. This will be yang. This will be yin. This will be masculine. This is feminine. And when they both work in harmony with one another, what actually happens is we get this spiral evolutionary process going up. This will be called Kundalini rising. I call it Kundalini because I like to, but this is what we can do. We can awaken Kundalini before it's ready. And that can cause us a lot of problems because unless it's transformed through an open and flowing heart, it can go from here straight into the head and it can cause absolute murder and chaos. And I think there's inappropriate practices and misinformed practices that can cause early Kundalini awakening, and it can send you around the bend and send you mad, And I think the more that we understand that Kundalini will awaken in its own time naturally, but there is a fast track to doing it, and we can use breathing and we can use meditation and we can use positive emotion to allow all these things to sort of come online. So I'll explain this a little bit more now. Now I'm just going to look at my comments here. Sherry, Tesla coil spinning both ways. Yeah, okay, so that's a balance thing. Not quite sure what that means, but we'll carry on. So here's the meridian system. Then there's 12 meridians. There's 12 spheres of consciousness. There's 12 aspects to the chakras. So what happens is the invisible spiritual energy comes in. These are called morphic fields and morphic resonances, right? Each one of those spheres is operating at a different frequency and sending different information. So it works from the cosmos, that's the high energy, high frequency. And then as it descends then, or as we descend through these, so what's actually happening in the cosmos is a representation of what's actually happening in our individual souls, and also then is translated into our individual physical bodies. So if we can understand this and start to work with the feelings and become more sensitive, if you like, to the flows and the forces that are influencing us, then we've got a much better chance of understanding what actions we need to take. So I'll explain this more. So we've got 12 different meridians. These are magnetic systems. So the meridians are magnetic energy, basically. Well, they're not all magnetic, but just for the purposes of this talk, it's a magnetic energy. And as the magnetism flows, more fluently, if you like, through the meridian systems, it will influence then the nervous system underneath it. And here's the nervous system. So the invisible realms are sending information. The information's coming in the form of photons. The Schumann resonance is increasing. It's impacting upon, like a drum. It's beating a drum on the Earth's sort of surrounding area. That's impacted upon the Earth's chakras. It's amazing, this, don't you think? The Earth's chakras are then sending information to us who are now standing on the Earth. That's impacted upon our own personal chakras, and it's sending information through. However, if the meridians are blocked, right, then we'll feel a disturbance when we become more and more sensitive. So then we can stop, use a certain breathing technique, take a step back, and we can almost inquire of our innate intelligence, or of our intuition. What is it that I need to do? So if we go in with the, I really don't know what's going on, but we ask the question, I wonder, could you help me to clearly see? And don't forget, this is an innate intelligence that can see more than us, knows more than us, and is only too willing to provide the information we need. And sometimes the information you get is not what you want to hear, but it is what you want, what you need. So it's learning to trust these feelings and then taking the action on the information that we're receiving. And this might work on, for example, we might have problems down here in our digestive or our urinary system, you know, with the bladder meridians and this central vessel here. So it's, if we get an area of discomfort, we can ask, is it physical? Is it emotional? Is it mental? Or is it spiritual? Right. And then we can go through that process. And generally speaking, throughout the day, you'll be given God knows how many clues to it's that, it's that, it's that, it's that. And you get repeated information all the time if you ask for it and just be patient and sort of listen into the cues and the clues that the universe is sending. So just to say that this magnetic energy then, when it's flowing vitally, it will stimulate the nervous system. Now, the nervous system connects all our organs, but it also connects, so there's the brain and the spinal cord. It also connects not only our endocrine glands, like I've mentioned before, but it also connects our muscular and skeletal system as well. So the reason I'm going to talk about musculoskeletal system is alignment and posture is important. And the way we posture ourselves in the world is sometimes to do with how we process information emotionally and logically as well. And that's all sending information through our nervous system. I hope this is making some sense. And, you know, if it isn't, if it's too complicated, please send me some comments so I know, because otherwise I need feedback. I don't care what you say. If you say, could you do this, Joe? And could you do that? I'll try and respond and act accordingly for the next session that's coming up. So here's something is very important, connective tissue. And this is what connective tissue looks like. And you can see it's almost like translucent. Translucent means it lets the light through, not necessarily clearly, but this is how the meridians and the nadis, the energy channels from the invisible realm, so it sends magnetic information through the connective tissue. And this connective tissue, it's a bit like cling wrap, you know, we call it cling film in the UK. You know, when you get a piece of steak or something and you wrap it in cling film to keep it fresh. Now, if the connective tissue is constricted in any way, it can actually cause structural and functional problems with the organs and the muscles underneath. So sometimes there's nothing wrong with your muscles other than they're too tightly connected because of the connective tissue, because the information that's coming in through the meridians and the nadis and the chakras isn't being expressed fully. So we get congestion in our connective tissue. And that's why it's so important to have connective tissue massage and full body massage and stretching and baths with Epsom salts and all these sorts of things, is to look after our skin, because that's a connective tissue, and look after the cling wrap that surrounds our muscles as well. So deep flowing connective tissue massage can help the emotional blockages, right, if we only express them. And it's very strange this, because we talk about muscle memory. There isn't really any memory in the muscles. That's contained really in the invisible dimensions of the mind. But once we start to work on the physical body and create some space, it's amazing how sometimes emotions start to emerge, and then we can start to understand where we've been holding ourselves back. So just to say something more about connective tissue, it's misunderstood, it's sidelined because it's not important, but it really, really is important because it's feeding information to the muscles, and the muscles direct our movements and the actions and the activities we take. So that's important as well. The other thing to mention here is that there's a sort of water and plasma is so important because there's like a liquid gloop. It's like a sort of a plasma that works through the connective tissue. And if anybody listened to my talk with Denise, I'm sorry, forgotten your name, but Denise Chadwick, sorry, Denise, the other day when we talked about connective tissue, there's lots of information there on my Facebook page on that. So just to go back to this, not only is plasma flowing through the connective tissue, but also the way water works as well is important. And scientists are beginning to discover now there's actually a fourth phase of water. So not only do we have solar and plasma flares acting, so there's plasma in the cosmos that's moving as well, but there's also water and plasma in our bodies that needs to start moving as well. So drinking plenty of water up to a point is important, and movement is important as well. But more than anything else it's being true to yourself and expressing yourself from the core, and then everything starts to move. And emotion is energy for movement. That's what it means. Emotion is energy that's there for the purpose of acting and expressing yourself fully from the depths of your consciousness. And that's what happens really is the connective tissue, these people now completely flattened out, they're perfectly in line. These are their front muscles, your pectoralis muscles, your intercostal muscles, your abdominal muscles, all these things, if they're perfectly aligned, then we're not out of alignment then with the force of gravity. However, if muscles are too tight, especially around the head region and the neck and shoulder region, our head can tilt forwards, our backs can start to arch, they can come outwards here, this is called kyphosis, they can go inwards here called lordosis, and we can be out of alignment. And what happens is our spine then becomes misaligned, and we can get like scoliosis. That then causes the chakras not to be able to function properly. If the chakras aren't functioning properly, then the invisible energy from the soul that's trying to express itself can't be fully expressed. So restoring balance, restoring posture, and restoring physical alignment is very important. So massage, Tai Chi, gentle movement, Qigong, all these things, steam baths, all these things are helpful. And stretching is so important. It's to sort of almost develop a sacred ritual, maybe in the morning. That's what the salutation to the sun is. It's getting out of bed, facing in the direction of the sun, allowing more and more intelligent energy to come from the sun in solar pulses and photons. So that's now aligning with our crown chakra. It's almost like infusing our body, and we're sort of almost like saluting the sun and asking for more and more information to come through, to permeate and diffuse through all the cells of our body. And this will then impact upon the way our stem cells express themselves and how our DNA expresses itself as well in a much more healthy way. So here's the thing is, here are the 12 spheres of consciousness. And this one here is, that one goes in there, that one goes in there, that one goes in there, and so on and so forth. So we have 12 bodies, if you like. And if any of these bodies are not in alignment, then what we need to do is we need to sort out that misdirection. How do we know what to work on? Well, let me just show you that. When we incarnate, and this is my understanding, could be wrong, but it seems to be working for me at the moment. When we incarnate, the I am approach is about developing our strengths. So we may come in, right, based upon this, with say 3 particular strengths. So here's this one here, number 2, number 5, and number 11. So that would be, if our soul was in alignment with our strengths, we'd be living our perfect soul purpose, right? And we'd be happy, we'd be joyful, and we'd be helping not only ourselves and those closest to us, but we would also be helping humanity. So we'll be a fully rounded, wholehearted, wholesome person. And that's what everybody wants, really, I'm sure. But however, what happens is during the incarnation process, we can pick up all sorts of gunge as we incarnate. We can pick up all sorts of what they call miasms and things. So we need to be able to work on that. Now, let's say this person comes in here and he has to work on his first one because he's ungrounded, he's weak. So we already know that this is associated with the root chakra. It's being able to stand on your own 2 feet. It's the ability to step forward if you need to, but step back as well. So this is important, this. So if we need to work on this, this would all be about working with the physical body, understanding the signs and the signals that the cosmos is sending to us, but understanding that we need to be aligned, because if we're not aligned, then the force of gravity is always playing its part and always bringing us down, you know, and that's why it's called gravity, because it's bringing us to the grave. Now, here's a good thing is the opposite of gravity is levity. And you know what levitation is? It's an uplifting energy. So if you go back to that picture I showed you before about the energies coming in and the energies going out, there should be a flowing, uninterrupted stream of information coming in and information going out, you know, and that's what we're really hoping for. So, and somebody else might come in and their job might be, for example, to work on number 7, you know, and that's to do with the throat and the pituitary gland and stuff like that. So this is just an example, is that sometimes we can feel disturbed because one of these is out of alignment. And in order to fulfill our soul's purpose and get these balanced here, we need to work on this one. So that's just a little example. I don't know whether that's made any sense. And then that's what we need. We need to be in perfect alignment. This is the postural line of, this is the anti-gravity alignment. And so muscles here, there's things called anti-gravity muscles. So we've got muscles here at the back, the trapezius. We've got muscles here, the pectoral muscles. They're supposed to be perfectly toned and balanced in order to bring our spinal cord into harmony. And if we're in harmony here, some people call this the Hara line, if it's working on the energy channels, you know, there's information coming up from Mother Earth up our spine. It gets then circled then in what's called the microcosmic orbit, and it brings information back. So actually what happens is it goes up here, up our spine, up to the top of our head, to the brow, and then we can bring it down forward as well. And if you look at this sort of plane as well, these need to be balanced too. So I'm nearly done now, except just to say is, so the solar pulses are coming out. The soul, what's actually happened is, in the great shift of consciousness that's happening now, souls are awakening and activating. And then the soul then, in its process of embodying into the human vehicle, is sending out more and more signals. So there's perfect signals coming from the sun. It's stimulating our soul and our soul's development. That's then sending, depending on its personal curriculum, it's sending those vibrations through those various chakras. Each person will have different ones working. And then if we're in poor shape, it will be sending information in. This person then is starting to receive the information and starting to act and move. And then as we go along, then their posture starts to improve. Their flow of energy is improving. They become more strong, more confident, more aligned then with cosmic consciousness. They're receiving more and more downloads. You hear people talking about, I've been downloaded today. I've had 3 days of download. And that's all part of this realignment process, spirit, emotional, logical, or thinking, and physical. And then we're nearly there. I've put these different red and yellow and green. This is all working towards back to the crown chakra and to enlightenment. And finally, just before we pop our clogs, we just say, that was really good, Dad. I've enjoyed that. I think I might come back and do it again. So this is the perfect template that's sending vibrations out, but we're working now. We're embodying now into the human body. This is flushing us out. We become more aware. We're starting to straighten up and realign in all those different components. And then right at the end, we reach self-actualization, enlightenment, and cosmic consciousness. And we can tick the list off to say, well done, soul, you've done a good job. And thank you, human, you've been absolutely brilliant. And thank you for paying attention at long last. And if you don't get it right, and I'll spend more time on this next week because this is important. Just let me check my watch. Okay, I've gone over it a bit now. I might do another sort of 5 minutes or so. But there's areas that are particularly susceptible to obstructions, and the myofascial or the myofascial connective tissue, that's when that cling wrap is too tight. So there's areas that we can actually apply sometimes focused attention or massage to these areas. It releases the energy, and we can start to understand then that we're flowing better, try and listen to the information that's coming to us. So I'll talk more about remedial massage therapy and trigger point massage therapy and how that can be connected to the heart as well. So these are all these different areas. And just let me go back. Next week, I'm going to talk about stress management, because people say I'm really stressed. And what stress is really is, it's just really when we go into fight and flight response and we're living our lives on the defensive. And when we live our life on the defensive, we can't be creative, because all we can do is think about surviving and not thriving, you know. So there's lots of people who talk about, you know, moving from surviving to thriving. But, you know, there's a lot of that talk is really just coming from the head. This is my experience. I'm not sort of bad-mouthing anybody, but it's just what I see, really, only because I've gone through the process. So lots of people know what they need to do. It's just that they don't get around to taking the actions in order to express these things fully. Some of the things that will help in the meantime, while I come back in a couple of weeks' time, is simple stuff, honestly. Drinking plenty of water. Try and eat food that's as clean and as organic as possible. Now, I know that organic food and stuff is more expensive. I know that. So anything that you can do to work towards the cleanest food possible. Obviously, as well, drinking water is important. So if you can filter your drinking water, that would be useful, because there's a lot of stuff in water now that really shouldn't be there, and it's causing toxicity. What happens is then, as we drink these things and eat these things, our body gets into a situation called meta-inflammation that causes irritation of our cells, and it can lead to other nasty stuff down the line. So this is really about cleaning up our act, really. So that's that. Movement as well. Just 10 minutes every hour, just moving around, stretching. Even if you're sitting in a seat at a computer, just doing some up-down movements and stuff like that. Plenty of nature stuff, if you can get into that. Get away from sick buildings if possible. Get back into nature, bare feet, sand, forest bathing, all this stuff. Why should you do this? Because if you don't, what will happen is you'll compound all these problems. You'll become more and more exhausted. You'll be fighting resistance all the time. You'll have no energy. You'll get pissed off. You'll become depressed, and life won't be worth living. So, you know, well, how do I know? Because that's where I was for such a long time. So there's a thing on this. If you go onto the Soulogy network, you can play this presentation back. If you can use this QR code, it will take you to the I Am Approach session 4. Make comments, put questions in. I'll try and adjust my next time's talk to answer some of those questions. If I didn't answer those questions at the beginning, whoever put them up satisfactorily, then please get onto me and I'll try and expand upon them more and learn a bit more about them myself if I can. So on that note, I'm going to come out. It's going dark here in the UK. I'm going to love you and leave you all. And I hope that you've got something from that. And I don't mind you, you know, being constructively critical with me. If it's too complicated, let me know. If I'm talking too quickly, if it doesn't make sense, or if it's good, you can say that was really good, that, Joe. So whatever you like. And on that note, I'm going to love you and leave you. And thanks very much indeed for watching. And thank you, Todd, for looking